feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the first PTBNL. We are not the UK Phillies. We are very much so just a very Philly type of Phillies podcast. I am your host, co-host, coast for tonight, Shane, and I am joined by Sean New. Sean, who is right now our only active writer on the new website. Sean, how are you?
Good. Feeling good.
Because I am unfamiliar with our own website at this point, what is the address that we can get everyone at? I probably should have asked you this beforehand.
For the articles?
Yes.
I think it's WordPress.
That's what I thought. WordPress was still in it.
Yeah.
All right. You got it up?
I think it's WordPress.com/ I can't find it.
I think it's / always next to your podcast. I couldn't remember if WordPress was still in it or if I paid for the domain yet. I'm all behind once we close down the actual website. Yeah. But Sean's got a bunch of good pieces coming out. And like I said, he's right now our only active writer. Everyone else is kind of focusing in on all of the new podcasts that are kind of out on their own. But Sean, where can everyone find all your stuff on Twitter? That way, when you piss people off inevitably on some of your takes tonight, they can call you out on it.
You can find me at SeanNew27 on Twitter.
All right, and then you can also find me on Twitter. It's at Shane_Mead. You can find any other of our, I guess it's 5 other members of the PTBNL by AMYP here. You can get Rob. He's kind of my right-hand guy for everything. It's at radio_Rob. You can get our TJ's One of Us guys in AJ at AJ Santangelo. Or AJ_Santangelo. There we go. That's Andrew. Or the host of TJ's One of Us at SP Novick. And then you can get the 2 Joes over there. You can get Joe Boric at JJ Boric 26. And then you can get Girardi, who was supposed to be here tonight and had some car trouble. Hope he didn't die. He is at Brosif Biscuit. And if I'm forgetting anyone, sorry. We have a large team here for our Philadelphia Phillies segment, which we will eventually come up with a real name because everyone's using PTBNL. I thought it was so original, and here I am. There's like 14 podcasts. Was it you that brought that up in the chat?
Yeah, I brought up how UK Phillies use it, and then I think it was Scott brought up there was a couple different podcasts that use the same name. So.
Yeah, I Googled it. Not Googled. I went into the Apple podcast search and put it in. There's you got to scroll like 15 to get to us. That's pretty ridiculous to find the number 1 PTBNL, which is obviously us. But Sean, baseball's back, man. We are 7 games into spring training, which is one of my absolute favorite times of the year. You get to see people who no one knows who the fuck they are, and that's kind of my bag. I'm all about the Tyler Houstons of the world, which, I mean, he was a ridiculous name in like 2003, I want to say. But this is exciting, man. So we get to talk about all the young guys who are coming up who are in their first or second big league invite. We get to talk about some of the guys who had some down years, some guys coming back from injuries, new additions. And this year we get to talk about a new skip in Joe Girardi and a lot of things about the old management regime over here with Gabe Kapler and Chris Young. You actually wrote about some of this in your last piece, shameless plug for the Always Next Year podcast. You talked about an interview that Zach Eflin had. I believe the interview was with Jim Salisbury, if I'm not mistaken. Is that who it was with?
Yeah.
Cool. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
So basically in late August of last year, I think it was late August, Eflin came out to Salisbury after he threw, I'm going to say about 7 innings scoreless or a couple runs he gave up. And he basically said that he went back to how he pitched at the beginning of the year when he was kind of pitching how he wanted to pitch. And Chris Young came up to him and kind of told him to switch his approach, throw higher fastballs in the zone. And that's when he started to get shelled. And that's actually when he got taken out of the rotation and put into the bullpen. And everybody was kind of writing him off and saying he didn't belong in the rotation. But when he got another chance, he kind of said screw Chris Young and everything he was telling him to do and threw fastballs down in the zone, which he had success with at the beginning of the year, and he ended up being one of the most key starting pitchers for this team when they started to unfold and not play well in September. But he was one of the bright spots. So I'm excited to see how Brian Price kind of takes advantage of what he can do. I'm not sure how Brian Price is going to affect the rest of the rotation, but I'm excited to see how it pans out.
I mean, so far people have had really, really good things to say about Price, and they're talking a hell of a lot right now about last year's regime, whether it's Chris Young, whether it's Gabe Kapler, whether it was the philosophies that were put in place, whether it was the types of things that were asked to be executing out there, every single one of their starts, or if they're a position player. A lot of things went wrong. I'm curious with Eflin, though, because I am not an Eflin believer. I believe that he's just not a good pitcher. Like, he's okay. Like, I'll rephrase. Eflin's like fine for a 4 or a 5, but I would have put him in a Manny Machado deal 2 years ago and not fucking thought twice about it.
Absolutely.
Like, this thought that he's, I don't know, this thought that he's a potential 2 or a 3 to me is just so not realistic. So, like, last year, do you think that he was kind of just, he had a good couple weeks and then in very Eflin-like fashion kind of shit the bed and then didn't change fucking anything and then just kind of got hot again because that's who he's been for, I don't know, his entire professional career?
Right. I've always been on the other side of this argument. I've always believed in Eflin, and I feel like he's still young enough and he has the build of somebody who can be a long-term, like 3 or 4. That's always been my expectation of him. With what the Phillies have right now, you don't need to expect him to be, a star like number 2. I mean, we have the pitchers in front of him to kind of make him relax. Last year, we were expecting him to be a 2 or a 3, and I think that kind of added to his struggles in the middle of the year. But adding Wheeler and kind of putting the pressure all on Arrieta to turn the tides of this season, I think Eflin, if he just comes out and has a 4.45 ERA and goes 6 or 7 or not even 5 or 6 innings each start, that's really all you can ask of him.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And look, we'll get to Arrieta in a little while too, because I am on a very different side of Arrieta than everyone else this year. I feel like I'm always on the opposite of what the norm is when discussing Jake Arrieta. But Zach Eflin, going along with that philosophy last year and really through the Gabe Kapler tenure, it was almost, we have zero analytical philosophy behind any of our decision process, behind any of our scouting or any of our game planning. And it was like they went from that 0 to 60 and they tried to do it like overnight. And a lot of these guys who were in the system for a bit here, they're now at the major league level and being asked to do something completely out of what they've been shaped for throughout their entire minor league development process. So now you get a guy like Chris Young, Jesus. Now you move on from Chris Young here and you get Price. And you start to see a little bit more of that. I don't want to say old school approach, but there's certainly a better balance. And that's the same kind of thing that we see with when we're talking about Girardi, is a guy who's very analytical in his own right, but he has that natural feel of the game of baseball and the feel of a player and the moment. And we're seeing right now that different guys, and namely right now, I've been sitting here trying to scroll through finding this damn tweet of a quote from JT Realmuto, but I can't find it, so I'm going to kind of wing it and summarize it for the way it was basically said. But it was going along with your Eflin quote in your Salisbury interview last year. So JT Realmuto had basically said, it was something he didn't really want to discuss. However, that's not the way you can approach things. You can't pick one spot with one pitch and just pound that spot. You have to be a pitcher first and not just a thrower to a target, which is essentially kind of what Chris Young was trying to make guys like Eflin do, guys like Pivetta do. They were trying to, beat analytics with analytics solely, and there was no feel to that. And when you have a guy like Eflin, who, I mean, let's face it, like he's a bigger frame guy who has, I think, was it last year he came into the season with both knees just having surgery on, like minor but cleanups.
Yeah, I think so.
Like you're asking a lot out of a big physical guy to just pound one spot all the time and never mess with one pitch. Like you got to vary that stuff up. Like his arm's going to slow down at some point. His lower half isn't going to carry through with the same, kind of like if it's 95, 96 in May and June, maybe come July or August, that guy's legs are wearing down. Like it may be 93, and up in the zone, 93 is not nearly what 96 is.
Right.
What is your expectation of Brian Price now that we've seen this rotation once through? We've seen a couple different changes from these guys. Do you have a better feel already with a guy who kind of mirrors that balance to analytics versus the feel of the game?
I think what Brian Price is doing compared to what Chris Young is doing is Chris Young kind of gave every pitcher the same approach, and like he didn't have specific upgrades for each one of the starting pitchers. He taught Velasquez picked up another pitch, and he looked fantastic in his start. Pivetta looks like he picked up another pitch. He's focusing his time on upgrading each pitcher to their own strengths instead of kind of telling all of them what they should be doing as a whole. And I feel like that's one of the main things. Like he's trying to unlock every one of these pitchers' potential, whereas Chris Young was trying to just, like you said, pound the analytics. And I don't think it worked that well last year, like for that reason.
It definitely did not work last year.
Exactly.
So one of the interesting things is, and most pitching coaches are coaches who preach pitching in any capacity, whether they're managers or just strictly pitching coaches, they have kind of like a go-to pitch that they like to teach guys to utilize differently. We used to joke about all the time, when Rich Doobie was here, if you were here, like he was going to teach you a cutter, and that was in part to, along with Roy Halladay, who also threw the pitch, Cliff Lee, who also kind of threw that pitch as well. Like that whole, Four Aces and Joe Blanton, like that was a pitch that was developed for everyone. Cole Hamels began to throw that pitch, and it made that running fastball that much more lively. And for Brian Price, his kind of go-to pitch is that changeup, which is something that he is working on with Pivetta, something that he is working on, namely with Vince Velasquez right now. Two guys that desperately need their secondary pitches to kind of find some better life and find out how. So this is, and I'll backtrack it for just a second, but growing up with baseball, we were, as kids, everyone wants to throw a curveball because it's sexy. But the thing is, your curveball is a hell of a lot harder to throw from the same arm slot and that same release path than a changeup is.
Yeah.
And you can see that. But if you can find a way to master the pitch of a changeup and throw that from that same release path that you had your fastball on, that's a devastatingly good pitch. There's a reason why Cole Hamels was as good as he was without a true third pitch, because it wasn't a fastball curveball guy. He was a fastball changeup guy. And that makes a big difference. So for a guy like Vince Velasquez, whose fastball is garbage, it is so flat, it suddenly has a little bit more respect to it when you're able to throw with consistency and placement a pitch that's going to drop off 8 to 10 miles an hour out of that exact same spot. How important is it to you to know that your pitching coach that is coming in here is not preaching a Vince Velasquez flat fastball belt high, or letters high at 94, 95. But now it's going to be fastball coupled with a moving changeup out of that same slot.
I think that's huge. I think that's one of the reasons why Velasquez is going to kind of surprise people this year, because I think so many people have already given up on him. I think when he adds that changeup, less hitters are going to be fouling off pitches. He's going to attract more swings and misses, and it's going to be more efficient, like moving through the lineup. And I think that's one thing, like it feels like every one of Velasquez's starts last season, he went 4 or 5 innings and threw 100 pitches. And it wasn't that he didn't pitch well. It was just that he wasn't accurate, or he wasn't attracting swings and misses. He was just pounding that fastball in the zone. And not to say that he wasn't doing it well, but adding the changeup and especially for him and Pivetta, it's gonna work wonders for them. They're gonna be much more effective this season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know how the rotation is going to really kind of shake out after your top three of Nola, Wheeler, and then we're going to put Arrieta there,
right?
Because you kind of have to.
But like, I don't $25 million. He's going to be your number three. He has to be
at this point. Which, look, it is what it is, and like I said, we're going to get to my Arrieta stance soon. But you have Eflin, you have Pivetta, and you have Velasquez, and for years the thought has been, well, it's got to be Vinny going to the pen. His stuff's going to play out of the pen. I don't see his stuff as good at all. Like I think that guy's going to get absolutely lit up in the bullpen.
Well, the argument for him going to the bullpen is that he's so good the first time through the lineup, and then the numbers for hitters seem to triple the second and third time he faces.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah. So I think when you look at it like that, when he comes out of the bullpen and throws an inning or two, if he becomes a long man, you can even throw him in for a third inning, and you get him right back out before they have a chance to come back up against him. And with that philosophy, you could go an inning or two without of scoreless relief. But I mean, I agree. I don't see his immediate stuff isn't good enough to play out of the bullpen. It's just a fastball with a little bit of heat. But you're right, it is flat, and I wouldn't trust him out of the bullpen right now.
Yeah, I just, and look, as bad as our bullpen is, like, we could use guys that have like any velocity, or I shouldn't say as bad, like as questionable as our pen is right now. You definitely need guys who have even an established single pitch, which I'm not entirely convinced Vince Velasquez has. Do I think that Price could help him establish that with the emergence of that changeup? I do. I think that would help, but I don't know that I'm fully ready to commit to him in a 5 spot or in the bullpen, which kind of brings me to Severino blows his arm out. If you're the Yankees, and I saw this tweet from I can't even remember. It might have been Corey Seidman. At what point do you pick up the phone and say, hey, why don't you send one of Eflin, Pivetta, or Vince Velasquez just up the street to us? We could use a 5th starter at this point. Like, if it were up to you, of the 3 of those names, who's the guy you're most willing to part with, and what do you think will bring the most value?
I think just because of last season and all of the comments that he made, I think Eflin's – I hate to say this after all the Machado stuff, but Eflin's untouchable in that respect, unless they –
oh, my God.
Hear me out on this. I think right now, when you look at the starting rotation and coming from a fan perspective, you feel a lot more comfortable saying it's kind of a set 1 through 4 with Nola, Wheeler, Arrieta, and Eflin. And then the 5th spot's kind of up for grabs for any of Velasquez, Pivetta, anybody else. But I think it's got to be one of those guys. And I think you have to wait a little bit longer into spring to see who you really want and who kind of attracts the attention of the Yankees. I'd be surprised if they didn't already pick up the phone to call him, but at the same time, it's Matt Klentak. So, I mean, I feel like there's some traction there. There should be some traction there. We need to build up the prospects, the minor leagues. It doesn't look great right now, like our farm system. But, I mean, I don't know how much you're going to get back for a Velasquez or Pivetta right now. Well, yeah, right now nothing, but it's something that should be explored, and I think they will. I think you're going to hear rumors kind of start to swirl within the next few weeks once we start to see Vinny and Pivetta more often, but I'm not too confident that Klentak would get anything like that done. I think another team would jump in before the Phillies.
Here's kind of my standpoint on this. I and this is partially because I kind of loathe every single time that Eflin has to take the ball. I do recognize that he is the most kind of sure value of the 3. And I do believe that we could get a kind of a buy low with a prospect over there, a high A arm. Just see what happens. I mean, we got Pivetta in a Papelbon trade, and Papelbon was kind of toast towards the end here with a terrible contract, at his age and for his, production value. We were able to get a guy who, look, he had some upside. He had something to work with. I'm kind of the mindset, if Eflin can bring you back the most value, and if you believe that price can be the difference maker in creating a kind of a long man's mentality, or dare I say starters mentality out of Vince, or opener, I should say, out of Vince Velasquez, come like mid-May, when you have to manage the innings of a Spencer Howard, whom I truly believe will be up and a main contributor in this rotation.
God, I hope so.
Already on an innings limit for a bigger guy who hasn't really thrown a ton of innings in his professional career to this point and managed a shoulder injury last year. Like, I'm pretty okay with, based on your logic earlier, I'm pretty all right with saying, hey, Vince, go once through the lineup out there, 1.5 turns through the lineup. And we're going to turn the rest of this over to Spencer Howard, to get us to the 7th or 8th inning or whatever it may be. And you manage his innings that way, and you allow him to be still a main focal point of your pitching staff and the way that you kind of utilize guys. If that's the case, if they're committed to a Spencer Howard bring up earlier rather than later, does that change your mind and say, hey, Eflin, like, why don't you take the next bus to New York?
If it comes to mid-May, I mean, with that mindset, sure, you can find a trade for Eflin, I'm sure, easily. But I think it's just the mindset of, right now, you're going to get the best possible version of Pivetta, Velasquez, and any other guy battling for the rotation right now, because they're not a surefire. They don't have a job, like a set job right now. And if they don't perform in spring training, if they don't show that they can, like, throw a change up for strikes or whatever it is that Brian Price wants of them, they're going to be sent to AAA. And I think that's kind of driving them. They know what the stakes are. And I think if you ship off Eflin just for some more prospects that won't show up in spring training, you're going to get a more relaxed version of them, and they're not going to pitch up to what they can because they know that there's 2 open spots in the rotation, and they're both going to assume that it's for them. And to a point, they're not going to be as competitive, I don't think. I mean,
that's a really good point.
Might not play into it as much, but the competition is what's driving these guys. It's the same with the non-roster invitees that we have, of the amount of bullpen arms and the amount of surplus infielders we have on minor league contracts. Like, they know if they don't perform right now, they're not going to have a job come April opening day.
I think that's a really good point, and especially when you take a look at the 2 names who would have remained if you moved on from Eflin. You have Vince Velasquez, who has continued to say, I see myself as a starter. I'm a starting pitcher. And every once in a while he backs off and he's like, I'll do whatever the team needs me to do. And then a week later he's like, I'm a starting pitcher. Like, this is what I'm here for. And then you have head case, Pivetta, who I don't know what's going on in his brain ever, but he most assuredly sees himself as a starter and not a bullpen piece. Although I do believe he could be a dominant reliever. I agree with that completely. I'm not ready to turn him over to the pen yet, because he is a guy who's stretched out, who can eat innings. And we need that right now. But like, if it came down to it and we were able to make some kind of an acquisition at the deadline with the assets that we totally don't have, or sign someone in the off season, like, I'd feel pretty good about a multi-inning Pivetta out of the pen, if I'm honest. But right now, I kind of need him in the rotation. But let's jump to Arrieta real quick, and we'll kind of sign off on the rotation portion of things here. Obviously Wheeler dealing with his little injury type of thing, and Nola looked great. For his night out, his day out. He just looks like it looks like it's like June. Like, the guy he's so fucking good.
He is.
He still scares the shit out of me with how he throws. His elbow looks like it's snapping every fucking pitch. Yeah. Like, he terrifies me. So I just hope that he I don't know how he's doing it without serious elbow strain, but good for him. Yeah. But let's go to Jake Arrieta. So a lot of people, based on name alone and based on previous hardware acquired during a kind of like a historic 3-year run that he had there in Chicago, people got really attached pretty quickly. Like the dollar amount was high, but they were excited about what Arrieta could be. And I was like, guy's fucking toast. He's got nothing left. Like, what? Talk about a rapid decline. Like, this guy's going to be atrocious. And like, I was right. Like, guy's not a good pitcher anymore. And this brings me to now. He got hit kind of hard and had control issues in his first spring start. Right. And like, I think he's going to be legit great this year. It makes almost no sense. But here's a guy who's going to, he's on the last year of his contract, and the way that he pitches this year is going to determine if he's going to be a bounce around for maybe 1 year and an option for the rest of his playing career, whether that be 1 year to 5 years, like whatever it may be, or he's going to pitch well enough that he gets himself that 3-year deal with a 4th-year option or 4-year deal straight up, which I don't know who would do it, but maybe. There's a lot riding on this for him personally, both financially and to stay in the game and to find stability at the age of I think he'll be 36 or 37 next year at the end of this contract and entering into that free agency. A guy who, with the amount of tenureship that he has in the majors, like the last thing he's really going to want to do, and that any pitcher really wants to do, is to go pitch this year in Philadelphia and then go pitch next year in, well, I would love to pitch in San Diego, but say San Diego. And then like shit, the year after that, he's got to go to Milwaukee and like then Colorado. And it's just, that's not sexy to anybody, but like say he pitches well and he gets himself another 3-year deal. I'm feeling good about Jake Arrieta this year. Like he came, this is the second time he's not coming back from bone spurs. And the first time, one thing that I actually geeked out and kind of read about this a little bit. I think I talked about this last pod, but you don't really know immediately what's going on in your elbow, with those bone spurs, and the effects of it or the results that kind of come from those struggles, like present themselves before the physical ailments do. And like, it may start elsewhere. Like it may start with some numbing in the fingers, it may start with just failing to be able to fully, lock and straighten your arm at a release point. And the things that you may not immediately feel or pick up on, and then those things start presenting themselves physically, and then you're mentally aware of it as well. Now he's coming in fully healthy, both his elbow, his legs, and on a last year. Like, I think he's legit going to be really, really good this year.
I think on paper, all of that stuff, I completely agree with. This is his age 34 season, by the way.
34. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's even better. He's got a lot left.
I hope so. I'm buying in only because of all of the things you can add up with this. I think nobody understands how important this year is more than Jake Arrieta himself. He knows he has to perform. I was going to bring up the 1-year contract thing. He knows that if he wants to have any, sure future anywhere, he has to perform this year. And he's got to look and say pitchers can hang in there. Starting pitchers can hang in there for another 5 to 6 years past their age 34 season. They can do it. It's been done. And he's got to look at what he has. He's got to stay healthy. And I think with the addition of Brian Price, who's going to bring out the best in him, I think if he stays healthy, if the bone spurs truly are gone and they don't affect him this year, he can be a solid 3 behind Nolan Wheeler. And I think he knows that if he doesn't, he's not gonna get the contract that he wants this year. I think that's a huge part of this. It's a lot bigger in his head than it is any of ours, I think.
I think so too. But we've spent now 29 minutes on an awkward introduction to the show with a name that is not going to stick and a pitching rotation that may look vastly different come May. Right. So let's jump into some of the other position battles and some of the interesting storylines that have kind of made themselves present so far through the first 7 games of the 2020 spring training season for the Philadelphia Phillies. So let's start let's start at third base. So last year, obviously having to go through another Mike Franco season, who stinks at baseball, was painful. And mercifully, we let him go. And he seemed really well liked in the clubhouse, so I do hope he finds some semblance of success somewhere at some point. He's in Kansas City, I want to say now. Yeah, he didn't get cut yet, right? Yeah.
Nah, he'll probably start at third, I think, for them. I think they signed him for that purpose.
Probably. So, he'll be over there, but it opens up for the first time really since 2014, like a legitimate question as to who's going to carry the bulk of the load over there at third base, because the assumption since 2014 had always kind of been it's going to be Michael Franco. We have Scott Kingery, who played a lot there last year, especially kind of down the stretch. Right. But Joe Girardi, and much I think to the appease of many Philadelphia Phillies fans, views Scott Kingery as a second baseman and wants him to play one position. And I think when you hear Scott Kingery talk about his preparation physically for each game last year, it makes sense how his second half kind of fell off. For people who don't know that, he was legitimately preparing pregame for 5 different positions a day because he didn't know where the fuck he was going to go. So I do respect that. However, I do think that at a certain point, if he was asked to be a versatile player this year under Girardi and to play second, short, third, center, left, wherever it may be, I believe that there would be better and more clear communication from Girardi and company than there was from Kapler. I legitimately sometimes think it could have been 4 or 5 and he would still not have a fucking lineup card ready. And this is coming from, I loved Gabe Kapler. I actually thought he was a decent enough manager.
Yeah, I didn't mind him.
Yeah, but that was an obvious flaw, especially when you hear a guy like Kingery speak. So Kingery, we all kind of walked in thinking Kingery is going to be kind of the third baseman, and Gene Segura, who, by the way, the whole best shape of your life thing, I always fucking laugh and think I'd never see a goddamn difference in these guys. Yeah. They're professional athletes. Gene Segura looks fucking great.
I agree.
He looks like what he looked like when he was in Milwaukee. He trimmed out. His range looks, pretty decent over there, which is good because he had no range at shortstop. So I am genuinely excited in him. But we all walked in thinking it was going to be Scott Kingery, and Scott Kingery's basically just been told, hey, dude, you're going to be the fucking second baseman, which is weird for how this lineup is all going to go, because the best lineup, and we've seen it tweeted by a bunch of different people, I've said it a bunch, is, at least in my opinion, is somehow having Alec Baum in the lineup at third base. And you see the way Gene Segura is hitting the baseball and how good he can be as he was at the start of last season. He's got to be in the lineup, which means Kingery's kind of got to be the center fielder again. So,
makes sense.
What is your perfect – let's go opening day. Right now, if you had to make your money on it, put your money on it, 7 games into spring training, you're making a decision that's good for March 28th or whatever the week might be or day might be. Who's your starting third baseman for opening day, and does it change at any point in the season?
So I think what Girardi's doing right now with the positions is he's giving every person – he's not looking at the future right now. He's giving every player the best possible situation for them to succeed. So I think that's why you put Segura at third. There's a lot less range to cover than second base. You don't have to dive up the middle, which he obviously couldn't do at shortstop. I think that's why they did that. I think moving Scott Kingery to the position he's most comfortable in and saying you're going to stay at second base for the immediate future is the best case scenario for him. And I think as far as Alec Boehm goes, it depends how he plays, but by the time he's ready to come up, which we all expect to be, early May, end of April even, if not opening day, you're going to have to look at between Hazley, Segura, and Kingery. And you're going to have to look at which one of these 3 guys is most, easily replaced in the lineup. And if any one of them starts to struggle, it's not going to be Kingery. But if it is Kingery, he moves to the bench and you move Segura to second and you move Boehm to third. I think that's what Girardi's doing right now. He's putting everybody in a position where they can succeed. And whoever hopefully is least succeeding, I guess, by come the time Bohm needs to come up and be in this lineup. I think that's where Bohm's going to go to third, most likely. I mean, you could move him to first if Reese is truly struggling as much as some people think he will be. But as far as third base goes, I think Segura makes the most sense. I actually had to think through this because I immediately thought Kingery would go to third.
We all did.
Yeah. The more I thought about it, the more the problem at short last year for Segura wasn't his arm, it was his range. And moving him to third is the same distance to first arm wise. And he showed that he has the range to play third base. So I think that's how they're approaching third right now. I think Bohm comes up at the end of April, and that's when things need to be kind of shaked around. But as of right now, Segura is going to be the opening third baseman, to answer your question. It makes the most sense for right now.
So I kind of agree. However, I do have a suspicion. I believe that so you and I are the only ones so far who have had the ability to watch most, if not all, of the games, or at least listen, to these games from everyone on the show. Everyone else is catching highlights and, working normal jobs and things like that. We've had the ability to watch these games and then listen to them and read these articles and kind of go into a deeper dive than them. Alec Bohm is hitting the shit out of the baseball.
Yeah, he's impressive.
I mean, you find a place for that guy. And 2 years ago, they found that place for Rhys Hoskins and they put him in left field. And I'm not saying what I'm really saying is the fact that come opening day, I truly believe that a middle of the lineup bat that is going to be announced and introduced is going to be Alec Bohm. I think he's going to be the starting third baseman right away. The precedent was kind of set with these types of players, with Scott Kingery. He made that jump. It didn't exactly pay immediate dividends, but it made for a really exciting 2019 for him. And I think that it was the experience of 2018 that was invaluable to him. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of accelerated that process. And I think that Alec Bohm is way more talented than Scott Kingery. And if you could see that kind of a quick production out of Scotty, I think that you can find it out of Alec Bohm that much quicker and that much more productive. So I do believe that they will find a way. And it would not shock me. And I know he's terrible in left field, but he's not great at first base either. It wouldn't shock me is if they started moving Reese around too. If his bat isn't contributing to the level that it needs to, but there's still a threat of it contributing. It wouldn't shock me if maybe 10 starts this year, he's out in left field and Alec Bohm goes to first base, and just in efforts to have your most effective offensive lineup out there.
Right. I think the only thing that depends on is if McCutchen is ready by opening day, which we don't know for sure yet.
I don't know that I would ever, I would kind of just let him come back at the All-Star break. I know he wants to come back. See, I'm a guy who's torn my ACL a gajillion times, and I came back too early, and that's why I kept fucking tearing it. It makes me cringe when I hear him say yeah, I'm gonna be ready for opening day. Where's your stance?
It's his mentality, and I respect the shit out of it because I love that he wants to be out there as soon as possible. The second he tore it, he came out and said, "I'm going to be back and better than I was before I tore it," which was a 400.
Fucking everyone says that.
Well, McCutchen makes it so you believe him. But I don't disagree with that. I'd love to see him opening day, but at the same time, I'd love to hold him back and let these young guys come up. I mean, if you can hold him on the injured list for as long as possible and let some of the young guys start the season, that would benefit everybody. And then halfway through the season, you don't have to trade for somebody like McCutchen to come to the lineup. That's kind of huge. But I don't think you can hold him back as long as you want to. I think he's going the second he's cleared to play, he's not going to want to wait. And to go back to what you said about Bohm being on the opening day lineup, I think the difference between him and Kingery when he was signed to that 4 or 5 year deal to get him through arbitration or whatever, I think the only difference is you're looking at a starting 8 guys in the field right now. Whereas when Kingery was signed to his spring training deal, there's no real like set positions. There was a whole bunch of question marks, and you could call Kingery up to be a utility guy to play any 5 positions on the field. And I think that's why they were so quick, because of how well he played in spring training. They were so quick to sign him to that contract. The difference with Bohm is, you obviously need him, and I hope he is on the opening day roster. But you're looking at, other than left field with McCutchen, the 7 positions other than catcher that are kind of set. And it's so hard to tell Gene Segura at third base, when he's hitting the crap out of the ball in spring training and looks like he's in the best shape of his life, that he can't play third. And if you move him to second, then you're telling, Adam Hazley, who's also hit well, that he needs to, sit the bench. And it's probably, pushing these guys to play better in spring training. But as of right now, I don't see Bohm on the opening day lineup just because of that reason, just because of how well these guys are performing, how good they look offensively and defensively, and, how driven they are to keep their position. But at the same time, I hope I see him opening day.
What a problem to have.
Yeah. We haven't had this in a couple, almost a decade. We haven't had this.
Right.
Issue, so
like the Placido Polanco and Jim Thome, era of like, well, shit, we got these guys and nowhere to fucking play them. It's awesome. I'm so fucking excited for baseball. I can't even express it. I work at a bank, and like, man, I just prop my phone up come 1:00 every single day, and I just like leave it under my monitor and just have baseball on all day. Like, this is the best time of the year. This is fantastic for all my customers who definitely don't get the help they deserve. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I'll spin the phone around. You can watch baseball with me. And to have problems like this is what makes it so entertaining. Because we get to sit here and we get to talk about whether, our most exciting offensive prospect that we have had since the core of the last championship team, whether or not he's going to be an opening day guy or not, whether or not it's who's going to move to accommodate, the next homegrown cornerstone talent of the Philadelphia Phillies. What other first round pick may move? Is it going to be Hazley? Which, by the way, I love Adam Hazley. And it kills because I love Scott Kingery, but like long term,
Hazley's got to be the guy. He's got to be the one.
He's a fucking outfielder. Like, he's got to be there. Scott Kingery is a second baseman. Yeah. So like, it seems so weird to me to say it because I also love Kingery, but like, I kind of would like to keep Hazley as the guy and make Kingery go to the bench, as much as he's a much better player right now. Like, there's no reason to do what I've just said. Literally no reason. And it goes completely against the philosophy of me saying play Bohm at third. But like, long term, he's the guy. Like, it's going to be him and Moniak.
I hope so. One in center, one in left.
Right. Which is another thing, man. Mickey Moniak.
He's looked good.
I love this kid. Like, I've watched him at each level so far. Yeah. It's all right. So like, I tell the story all the time, but like, I took Stephanie down to the Shore House, in, I guess it was 2017 was he drafted? 2018?
He was
16. 16. He was 16. Yeah. So 2016, take her down to the Shore, and it's draft weekend, and she's like, well, what do you want to do? And like, I had to hack into like the upstairs Wi-Fi of this, like the split level other person who was there, and I was like, man, babe, I'm sick. She's like, you're not sick, you just want to watch baseball. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Let's go to the beach for like a couple hours, and then we'll be able to come back home and I can watch the draft like I want to do. And she was like, no, we're only here for 3 days. So I went down and I did what any sane person would do, and I did not apply sunscreen, and I sat as close to the water as I could so that I physically burnt to a fucking crisp and skin was flaking off my body, so that when she looked at me, she was like, "Oh my God, you need to stay inside." And I was like, "If you say so." And I got to watch Mickey Moniak get drafted for that fucking reason. So I did that. So I have a physical attachment and still, I'm sure, missing skin somewhere and probably some sort of awful skin cancer that is developing totally unbeknownst to me at this moment, because I wanted to watch Mickey Moniak get drafted because he's a fantastic baseball name and a fantastic baseball player. So I genuinely believe that he will be in the outfield sooner rather than later here as well. What is for all of the outfielders that have played so far who are not guys that we expect to be part of this kind of rotation,
right?
Who other than Mickey Moniak do you kind of have your eye on right now? If anyone.
Well, as far as the outfield goes, I'm kind of set on they're ready to bring back Quinn and Bruce, and I think they're both of them. I mean, as long as Quinn stays healthy, I think those are going to be your two backup.
What's your thought on him?
On Roman Quinn?
Yeah, so like I hate the kid. I don't hate the kid, but like fuck, I don't believe in him at all. Like he's like Kevin Cobbism. Like if there's a mat, he's gonna slip on it.
I believe in that he can be, like Juan Pierre or any of these.
No. Oh, absolutely.
No, like any of these guys that with no power that slap the ball and beat the ball out to first base. Like those kind of guys, the guys that can just hit straight through a hole and then steal two bases to get the third. You know what I mean? Like a guy you can have on the bench and he'll sit until the ninth inning when you need to pinch run somebody. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of guy he can be. And that guy is so valuable on the bench for any major league lineup. And
if he could stay healthy.
Yes, that's the big if. And I almost look at him getting hurt so often as a good thing. It's like when you have, hear me out. When you have him on the bench and he's not hurt, he's a huge asset to have. When he gets hurt, you see somebody else on the bench that, you wouldn't expect to see up in the majors. It's one of those things where it's like, you don't lose as much when he gets hurt.
Did you buy a Trevor Plouffe jersey when he had a walk-off home run against LA?
No.
I can't even remember if that was as a result of a Roman Quinn injury, but I was just taking the philosophy that you were speaking on.
But he's a valuable asset to have, and when he goes down, it doesn't affect, you're not upset that Roman Quinn got injured. You almost expect it. He's going to miss half of his games. So have a guy ready. I mean, he's major league ready. He's proven that. He's not starter ready, but he's bench depth ready. And once he inevitably gets hurt this season, one name I have noticed was Kyle Garlick. He's on the 40-man roster.
That was the name I was thinking of too.
He'll see some time once. I think he's the next guy up once Quinn goes down in mid-April. And then Jay Bruce is obviously going to be on the opening day roster. There's no way he's not.
For sure.
With his power. I think truly, come opening day, he'll be the starting left fielder.
I think so too.
I mean, you're not going to move Bryce Etter, right? But yeah, he'll be the left fielder. Until McCutcheon's ready, he's in left. I don't think Garlick makes the roster opening day unless Quinn's injured. That's pretty much it for outfield.
I guess I can't, I don't discount the tool that he can be for a team, Roman Quinn. You watch the guy run when he is healthy, and his instincts are so good, and he's so fucking fast. Defensively, he can hold his own, and he's just athletic enough to make up for stupidity. But I just remember watching in real time the camera on him rounding third base, coming home to score, and seeing this goofy little face, and I'm like, mother, you just hamstring again? It wasn't even running full speed. He hit the bag at third, and he was like, oh, I'm safe, and he just kind of jogged in, and a jog took it off, and then the camera went in slow again, and they're like, I think Roman Quinn's hurt. Sure enough, missed another 3 freaking weeks. I can't get excited about thinking about him as anything. It's until he proves that he can stay healthy. I am just going to get angry when I see him. And then I'm going to cheer insanely loud when he hits an upper deck home run for no fucking reason from the left side of the plate after exclusively telling us that he hits only right-handed.
That shocked all of us.
That was ridiculous.
That was
like nothing about Roman Quinn makes sense. But you mentioned earlier a plethora of rotational infield people. This is the second fucking podcast in a row that we haven't talked about Sir Didi Gregorius. Mainly because he doesn't really look like anything so far. Like he's just kind of feeling his way through things. Defensively, he looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
But at the plate is always kind of the sexier talk topic, and he's clearly still feeling his way out through that. So Didi, we love you. I'm so fucking excited that you're a Philadelphia Philly, but we'll talk about you probably next week at some point. But now I want to talk about Josh Harrison and shit, and Logan Forsythe, and all the other people that don't fucking matter who are inevitably going to make it onto this team. Right. What's kind of your ideal fit so far, especially with the rosters expanding to 26? Like we're going to carry another guy. Andrew Knapp's not going to be like a real person, and that's great.
That's the best part of it.
it's super nice. Like to know that he's not a needed pinch hitter and he can just catch additional games. Like I'm good with that.
I think that's where the hate comes from too, because it's not like he's a terrible hitter. And I I think it was Ty that said this all the time.
It's always Ty. It's always fucking Ty Dauber. I love him so much, but damn, and I respect him for sticking to his brand. Holy shit, man.
He stood by and said Knapp's actually in the upper half of backup catchers, which makes sense. I think the reason we hate him so much, as opposed to other teams hating their backup catchers, was because we had no depth on our bench. We had guys on our bench just because they should be there, and the fact that we had a switch hitting backup catcher, was so appealing to guys like Kapler and who was it, McCannon before him?
Yeah, Pete McCannon.
It was so appealing to them to have a switch hitter come in to pinch hit off the bench, even though he's your backup catcher hitting 195. They liked the matchup that they had because he could hit from either side of the plate. And I think Girardi realizes this, and I think we're not going to see him pinch hit anywhere near as much. I think that's where the hate came from, was because he would come in these clutch situations with bases loaded and 2 outs because for some reason Kapler trusted him, and he would strike out, and everybody would be like, why not? Why do we keep putting this guy in?
The big thing was the fact that they really like to utilize a lot of fucking bullpen arms every night. And when you make that many changes, especially specialization changes in the middle of innings, which mercifully every single rule change that has happened this year is just fallen in the Phillies' favor, like 100%. Get an extra bench guy. You never have to see, or almost never are going to have to see, Andrew Knapp pinch hit. Thank fucking God. That's phenomenal. You get that extra roster spot there. Relievers that have to pitch to 3 batters, like, not that Girardi is not responsible with his bullpen arms, but it's like an extra layer of protection to a thinning, always hurt bullpen here in Philadelphia. Like that's pretty good. Like, you throw 3 batters, you're probably going to get 2 days off now. That helps. DH is going to come soon, and like Reese and Bohm both can't play fucking defense. One of them won't have to. That's exactly. Fantastic. All these things are falling into place. And I hate the DH, by the way. Did I say that last episode?
You did, and I kind of brought up that I didn't hate it just because it plays into the Phillies' favor. I'm not for it at all. I wanted to make that clear. I couldn't say it last time, but I'm not pro NLDH.
Yeah, me either.
You brought that up. I'm not pro NLDH. If I had the choice for both leagues to pick one, I'd say no DH in either league.
Same.
Because it's if you're on the field playing, you should have to hit. That's how I've always felt.
If you had to have a DH in both leagues, and like I've had this conversation with people before, we may have had it last week on the pod too, so if I already asked you this, forgive me. But if you had to have a DH in both leagues, like, how would you utilize that rule? Would you say that the DH is responsible to hit all game? Would you say just during the pitcher? Would you say home team gets to decide? Like, what would be your like kind of caveat to that rule?
So I read that whole article about the whole the DH stays in with the pitcher, and I actually really like it because if you have a DH, you're gonna hit your best like bench guy, your best out of the, not starter. You're gonna have him hitting in the DH role. And I think it sucks for the rest of the bench guys because there's truly no reason for any of them to come in to pinch hit unless there's an extreme matchup like disposition or whatever. Like, there's no reason for those extra 4 guys to be there. And in my opinion, I would like for them to overrule the whole DH for the entire game. I like how the DH would hang in as long as the starting pitcher hangs in. That would add a whole nother layer of strategy. That would add a whole nother reason for all those bench guys to be there. You know, it gets the entire roster involved in every game. I think that's the smartest way. As far as the home team deciding, I might get too complicated, which is the same thing I think about the whole playoff setup that they're proposing, where the number 1 seed would pick who they want to play.
I think it's awesome.
I don't know about all that. I would like it, but it's just the whole like teams getting to choose what they want to do. I don't know. I like having set rules, if that makes sense. But
I don't know, man.
I'm all for change. I mean,
it makes you competitive, like through game 162. Like, unless you have a ridiculous lead for that top seed,
right? Which the Dodgers would have this.
Yeah, that's fair. So in the end, all really doesn't fucking matter. But I don't know. It's so appealing to me because there are sometimes there's situations where the last month of the season doesn't fucking matter for a team because there's so much distance there. But if you were able to sit there and say, you know what, I know exactly who I want to play of the bottom 3 or 4 contenders, like, let's set this up. And it's psychological, which is great. And that adds to the soap opera that is professional sports. But like, man, it's almost like ensuring yourself another bye week. Or bye series. Like, if you got to walk in there and face a team that kind of skated their way into the playoffs or got, you know, a couple pitchers that are hurt and you're going to face their 3, 4, 5 instead of their 1, 2, like, it's fascinating to me. And I hope that something comes of this. I don't know what will, but I totally took us off topic and it's my bad. But we wanted to talk about Logan Forsythe, Neil Walker, and Josh Harrison. Am I forgetting anyone? I think that's the 3 invites.
Tereus.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's a couple more I can't think of right now.
Phil Gosselin.
Well, yeah, and he's
Westchester's own. He honestly he's really good. I like Phil Gosselin a lot for what he is. He's going to be fun to watch in Lehigh Valley when I'm bored on a Wednesday night that the Phillies don't play. So of the names that we mentioned there, who do you think is kind of best suited for that kind of super utility infield role there?
I think everybody's already kind of writing in Josh Harrison just because of his experience, you know, his leadership. I think he's almost, I wouldn't say a lock just because I don't want Girardi to just assume locks. I think he's smarter than that. But I think he is a lock. I think he'll make it. I think Neil Walker just because of his bat. But, man, Logan Forsythe has looked good. Phil Gosselin has looked good. It's like every guy that's supposed to be battling with another person is just hitting the shit out of the ball every chance they get. And, you know, they're not looking like liabilities in the field either. So it's like it's making Girardi's job harder, which I'm all for. I'm all for all of this competition. I love it. It makes the spring training games that much more interesting to watch too, because you're looking at these guys that are fighting for a bench position, and they have a real reason to play, and they're winning games because of it, which makes it even better. Not that it counts, but you know, I truly think it'll end up being Harrison and Walker in the infield with those 2 spots, but I'd love to see Forsythe make it. You know, Tereus is fun. He's a little guy. I mean, Gosselin's going to be knocking on the door all season if he keeps hitting like he is now. So, I mean, we'll see, I guess.
We definitely will. We're approaching an hour here, so I'm going to ask you a few questions here. We didn't prepare for it. I've literally just been kind of scrapping things down as we went, kind of additional thoughts and things. So, first one, the Astros in their first 5 games were hit by 7 pitches. That is a 1.4 pitches per game clip. If you were a betting man, and if you're not going to fit in with our podcast group here, so at least lie about it. Would you take the over or under at 226.5 times hit this year through the regular season?
I am a betting man, and I have a few friends who are, I'm going to say, gambling addicts when it comes to betting about sports, who have already looked into trying to bet the over on that because it's absolutely going to hit. I mean, these guys are already getting aimed at in spring training games by guys that have nothing to do with them. The Marlins, what do they care? They won 60 games the last 2 years. Why should they be throwing at the Astros?
40 of them against the Phillies.
Yeah. But I would slam the over on that. I'm not actually going to, but it's absolutely going to be over whatever, Vegas gave it.
So I just took the percentage that they're currently at, that 1.4 clip and multiplied it by the 162 to get us a current number here. But I got you penciled down for the over. So should we all stay here with PTBNL, we'll be able to revert back to these different types of bets that we place and nothing's going to come of it here unless of course Vegas does put a line out, and then I'll throw the money down for the podcast on everyone's bets and we'll see how shit goes. Alec Boehm, his major league debut this year, May 1st, before or after?
I'm going to say after. And I'm only saying that because I have a feeling they're going to do the whole playing time manipulation. Did I say that right? That whole.
Yeah, but I think that thing's going to go away. So I don't really know that they're going to, the service time.
Service time. Yeah. That's what it was. I think they wait until after May 1st, just because I feel like that's how Middleton and Clentak are in the front office. But I would say after. If it's not opening day, it's after May 1st.
Okay. With the Astros thing, I also took the over on the Astros, by the way. Easy over. And then for this one, I'm going to stick true to my. I believe he is the opening day third baseman this year. I think that'll be something sexy and another level of excitement to kind of give an otherwise kind of quiet outside of the Girardi hire off season. I know it's weird to say quiet when you get a Wheeler and a Gregorius, but they're definitely second tier guys. They're not wow factors. But anytime you bring up a top prospect and an impact potential cornerstone, like that's about as sexy as you get internally. And I think they're going to want to do that. Philadelphia's not a happy place if you're a sports fan ever.
Not really.
All right. So Andrew McCutchen, over or under on games. I'm going to say 103.5. You think he plays over or under that? And that can be including just appearances as well. It's not starts.
I would slam that over. I think if he misses time, it's not more than a month or two. I think he's already trying to get into spring training games, even though he's probably not cleared, obviously. But I would slam that over. Absolutely. I think he doesn't miss any more than a month or two.
I am actually going to take the under there. I believe that Girardi is too intrigued with Hazley and Quinn, and then Brussel will obviously kind of double out there with McCutchen, that I think they're going to encourage him strongly to take his time and get fully healthy, and I do think that they're going to ease him back in. I'm going to take a close, but I think it's going to be under the 103.5.
Right.
All right, so collective wins, which is a bullshit stat for pitchers, but collective wins between Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, and I'm going to set it at 36.5.
Wins? Like their pitching stat wins?
Their pitching stat wins, which is a dog shit fucking stat. It means nothing.
Yeah. I would go 36. I'd go under on that. Just because.
You don't think either of them are clips in 20?
That's a good number. I'd say under, just because I agree pitching wins is a bullshit stat, and how many wins did Nola even have last year? He really didn't have, what was it, like 14?
Last year was a bad year.
Well, even when he was up for, like, even when he came in third for Cy Young, he didn't have a ton of wins. And 36, that's a tough number. I go under.
I would also take the under on this one. I also kind of stumble on it. I stumble on it because they are your only two legitimate pitchers that you should feel good about going out most days.
I'd feel more confident saying like a collective ERA, taking, the better half of that. Other than pitching wins is such a,
it's ridiculous. But I do believe that if two of those guys are going to hang in games long enough, consistently enough to get a win, it's going to be the two of them.
Yeah.
Like each one of them eat innings. I believe in the two of them being able to do that. It's a bullshit stat, but every year we in Cap We Trust, we always took at least one pitcher. Last year was Jake Arrieta, which was set by LJ Harrell, host of the Kelly Green Hour. I think he set it at like 13.5 wins for Arrieta last year. I can't remember. But we always do a pitcher's win one, which is still bullshit. Last one on this, we'll go Bryce Harper. We're going to go home run total on this one.
Over.
Oh, no matter what the number's at.
Nah,
I love it.
Let me hear the number.
40.5.
Ooh. Yeah, I'd still say over.
Yeah?
Year two, I'm all in on year two, Bryce.
All right, so you could have set this at 65, and I also would have said over. I 100% believe that we're going to get MVP level Bryce. I think that last year was such a slap in the face for him to not be in that All-Star game. When you kind of take a look at other people and he by no means had a good first half, but if he's the face of the sport, like there
was a picture of a banner
right?
It was San Diego, right?
Yeah.
And it had all All-Stars on it, including Bryce. And I think that was BS.
Same. And I just think that like the city of Philadelphia is such like an outcast, like bad brother of the entire sports world. Like, everyone fucking hates Philadelphia. And then you take like one of the most villainized superstars, who's, by the way, is an incredibly likable human being in Bryce Harper, and you put him in this city at the contract that he signed, when he signed it, for what he signed, and like immediately like that marriage is like villainized times a million. And I think that first half was tough last year, and I think last year's second half was incredible. He was unbelievable defensively, and he's a phenomenal teammate so far.
He's only 28 now.
27, 28 years old.
Yeah.
I'm all in. No matter what that number is set at, by the time that futures come out, I'm taking the over.
Absolutely.
And I'm feeling pretty fucking good about it. So you have any final stuff, anything we didn't touch on so far that you wanted to kind of dive in on, or any questions you got like that from me?
Not exactly. Do you think Knapp lasts the entire year, or does Grion finally push him out?
You want to talk about Marchand?
No, Grion. The other, I would love to talk about Marchand, but I think he's not. He's going to stay in AA, AAA.
He will.
Yeah.
I like David Guerrero a lot, but no, I do fucking hate Andrew Knapp. Like, I loathe Andrew Knapp, and I can't wait for the day that he's not a Philly, but I recognize that his specific need and the unique creation of the new 26th player on the roster really kind of minimizes all of my points of hate for him, and he kind of just fits. So, and look, he's got great hair. Like, the whole team has great hair, except for Reese. He looks ridiculous, but like, he's kind of got to be here for that. Like, they just got to keep that together.
Yeah.
So I think he
hangs.
What
What everybody says, he's such a clubhouse guy, and everybody loves him. The pitchers love him. When you match him with, when you do what you do with, I think it was with Ruiz and like Coast. They gave Coast like, might not have been Coast, but a lot of
teams. It was Chris Coast.
Well, no, like they gave him to a specific starting pitcher and said, you're going to catch once every 5 to 6 days for this guy specifically. And I think last year that was Knapp with like first half Eflin. And I think they tried to pair them together, and it ended up working out really well. And I think if they continue to do that, it's not going to end up being as bad. He's not going to have as bad of a year, I think. When you look at the external stuff and not just the clutch pinch hitting stats that everybody loves to zone in on, he's not a terrible backup catcher, and he does his job. Yeah. And that's my stance on Andrew Knapp.
I agree. I'm going to be very excited when he's not a Philly any longer, but I recognize that at this juncture, he is probably the best option for a very, I don't want to say meaningless, but not as heavily relied on position or player in that 26-man as people give credit to. So that was a good one. You got any others?
I mean, who do you think makes the 5th spot in the rotation? This is your prediction, personally.
So I think the rotation is the 4 that we talked about, and I do think it'll be Pivetta. However, I genuinely believe it's going to be Spencer Howard by May or June, I would say. And I think it's going to be really utilized uniquely. It would not shock me if it ends up being a Pivetta to the bullpen and then reinsert Vince Velasquez as an opener. And then, kind of manage Howard, or some combination or semblance of that.
I don't think Girardi would go to the opener. I think he would do, Howard for 4 or 5, and then maybe Vinny for 2 or 3.
That's probably more likely.
I could easily see that.
Yeah,
I think Vinny. I agree with your starting rotation too. I think Vinny ends up being a long relief option out of the bullpen, but. It's not confidence inducing.
Oh man, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna look. It's baseball, and I'm gonna eventually talk myself into every single one of the guys on the roster. Like reluctantly so with Andrew Knapp and Roman Quinn, but with like almost everyone else, I'm gonna find something like that one thing, like the construction of the perfect the perfect take is to find that one thing that's going to piss everyone off that even you don't even have to believe it. And you just work backwards in the way to prove it. And like, I'm going to have to do that with a lot of guys on this roster, mainly in the bullpen. Like I'm going to have to sit there and find that one possible positive thing and then work backwards on ways to prove that in efforts to talk myself into them. Like Andrew Knapp, he's specifically here for the hair. He's a handsome man. He's got to be there for this. Roman Quinn, I'll get back to you when I figure out what I like about Roman Quinn. But yeah, it'll be unique.
Okay. I like that.
All right, man, you got any final thoughts here? Or you got about it?
That's about it. Pretty much this entire podcast I've had open Twitter just to kind of look through like stats on guys, and I've had the GIF of Ramon Rosso making the guy on the Orioles just whiff like a sword, and it's a sexy pitch, and I've just been watching it over and over. So that's my final thought.
So while on the Orioles, my final thought, why the fuck are we talking about the Orioles? It doesn't matter. But what kind of a dumbass decided it was a good idea for the freaking Orioles to pump crowd noise into a spring training practice when they don't have they have no fans?
I guess to prepare for facing the Yankees, 27 times?
Well, it's like, who the hell cares? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That is some dumb shit that Kapler would have done.
If it works, I mean, if they end up beating the Yankees a couple times a year.
It's who the hell is it? Is it the Orioles though that kind of own the Yankees?
No, no.
What? No, but there's a bad team.
It might be the Blue Jays. It's not the Orioles. Orioles got pummeled by the Yankees last season.
I don't know, man. I can't remember. There was a team.
The Gleyber Torres stats against I think it was Gleyber Torres stats.
Yeah, he didn't I think he hit like 800.
He was the best hitter ever against one specific opponent in a season, like statistically of all time.
That's
something
absurd.
Like that.
I don't know. I'm trying to look it up super quick now, but I'm pretty sure it's just not going to get there. Regular season, because this is going to really piss me off.
It was like he hit like 12 something or 12 or more home runs against just the Orioles in a single season. Which
that was absurd. Teams, all right, fuck it. Can't find team stats. Doesn't matter. I'll eventually find it. We'll talk about it next pod. But remind everyone you should follow all of the fucking PTBNL, but now it's just going to be ironically named that because we will eventually name this later. But you should find or follow all of the members on Twitter. We'll start with the guys who aren't here. The Two TJs One of Us guys, which is our 76ers show, which you can follow at TJ is One of Us. They might even use the account sometimes. I'm not entirely certain. But it is at SP Novick and at AJ_Santangelo. Andrew also co-hosts a show with one of the two Joes, that is at JJ Bork 26. They are True Philadelphians podcast. Andrew also does like 9 other podcasts with his brother, someone else. I don't know. He's insane. The guy's a workhorse. Really good at what he does. Then we also have Joe Girardi, who was supposed to be here tonight. I did finally hear from him. He did not, in fact, die, so we do still have a 7th member. So, Girardi, when you listen to this, glad you made it, Dan. But he is at Brosif Biscuit. And then my right-hand guy, Rob, is at radio_Rob. He hosts the Disciples of Ed show. And will co-host a pretty much an About Philadelphia show with me, which we might even one day start instead of just talk about starting it. But he's at radio_Rob and at Disciples of Ed. Sean, where can we find you again?
Sean New 27 on Twitter, and then on the website, if I can ever find out what it's called.
Yeah, I'm so bad at that.
I get the edit page, and I don't know how to get to the actual viewing.
You don't have admin rights for everything?
No, I do. I just don't know. I go to open up the article and it brings me to editor instead of the actual website title. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's just www.wordpress.com/alwaysnextyearpodcast or AMY podcast. It might be something like that. But look, fuck it. I'll eventually tweet it back out. And I will.
I think I got it. anypodcast.wordpress.com.
There we go. It took us 4 episodes now to get that correct. You can find me at Shane_Mead. You can also find me on the Whiskey Ramble show with Steve, Baby Steve, Whiskey Schmitty, Steve Schmidt. He is at Schmitty324, and that is at Whiskey Ramble PC. You can also find me on Brotherly Pods Network talking some Flyers hockey. I'm also on TJ's One. I'm fucking everywhere. Just follow my standard one, and they'll tweet wherever I'm at. I'm not overly active on social media anymore, which is a fucking problem for our industry. But definitely follow the ANYP page too. It's kind of the umbrella thing that's gonna put out all of the alerts for all of our individual shows. This one as well. That's at ANY Podcast. This and all episodes are sponsored by Just Food, 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. I even told Asian Rod that we would start putting this at the front of ads because we talk for 90 minutes sometimes, and, well, I don't know who's hanging on this whole time except for us, so I will probably edit this out and put it in the beginning. So if you're hearing it twice, sorry. It's Just Food, 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. Locations at Del Val College, as well as Buckingham Green Shopping Center in Bucks County, PA. Sean, second podcast, was it pleasurable? Was it better with 2 people than it was with 6 last time?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so much better with 2.
Yeah,
such a pain in the balls with 6 people to try to give everyone mic time. So we said this last week and the week before that we would be putting out 2, 3, 4 pods a week. So far, we've put out 1 a week, so don't trust us for anything. We'll see you at some point in the next 7 to 10 days, we promise. But keep watching and listening to your Philadelphia Phillies. And go Phils, as always.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. been beat me dumb and lame.